to Talkin Business. I'm Joe Catrambone, CEO of the Stewart Martin County Chamber of Commerce. Excuse me. And it's my pleasure today to have Dr. Andrew Calderone with me. Doc,
Hi. Thanks for having me,
welcome.
Joe.
Welcome. So I've obviously read your bio, and I think you're probably, were you born in Martin County?
So I was born in Queens, but I grew up in
Oh,
Stewart.
okay,
So
okay.
from a young
Well,
age, I've lived in Florida.
there's not many. My son happens to have been in Florida, but there's not born in Florida, but there's not many. We don't find many native Floridians anymore.
Yeah,
But you went to South Fork High School.
went to South Fork. Yep.
Yeah, and you're probably the first jock I've interviewed, and I'm a frustrated jock. I played high school football and I coached high school football, so it intrigues me, and I enjoy. I could probably spend this whole time talking to you about your baseball career,
Yeah.
not only in South Fork High School, but at Palm Beach Atlantic University. So, what position did you play?
So I was a catcher early on in high school. Then I had a lower back injury actually. Then I moved to the outfield. So I played my later high school and collegiate days were left and right field. So I was a corner outfielder.
I played over 40 softball, and I was a catcher. And I played some. I was an outfielder in high school. I didn't play a lot in high school, but that's over 40 league. I was a catcher, and that's a killer position.
Tough position.
Yeah, it's a killer
Tough on the
position.
body.
Yeah. So what was your batting average?
So my senior year of college, I hit 331.
Oh.
I had 8 home runs. I had
Oh,
pretty
nice.
good senior
Yeah,
season.
yeah.
So
That's I had a question mark down if you hit any home runs.
Y-
Yeah.
a
You're a
few.
big guy. You've got a lot of power.
yeah, that was my game. So hit the ball, tried far, right? So
So my first contact with chiropractic was probably, God, over 40 years ago. And at the time I was in Titusville. That's where I was living. And a friend of mine was a chiropractor, and I hurt my back. His name is Gary Ostrowski. And I hurt my back, and he fixed me. Fixed me up, where I could function. Anyway, where I'm going is with this is when I moved to Martin County in '89, he was a Palmer graduate. Now, I didn't realize that there were differences in the way
training.
chiropractic colleges, schools teach manipulation and things of that nature. So Gary was a bone cracker, and that worked for me. So I get down here and hurt my back, and I go to a chiropractor, and they have me laying on a table, vibrating, never cracked my neck, didn't do the bone cracking.
Yeah.
So from then on, I would literally drove to Titusville.
Wow, that's a far
When
drive.
Yeah, for my chiropractic care, and then finally, Dr. Frank Rubino, he was a Palmer graduate. He opened an office here, so I didn't have to go to Titusville anymore. So I have my Palmer guy right here. So tell me a little bit about the different strategy or philosophy in the schools and the way they teach.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to Kaiser University in West Palm Beach. Again, kind of building off what you're saying, a lot of the chiropractic schools have different techniques, different philosophies. The school that I came from is very evidence-based, so we learned a lot of research-based techniques. Not saying that the other techniques aren't research-based, but this was very evidence-based, very strict schooling on the technique. I know you had mentioned the bone cracking technique.
Yeah, snap them.
So the technical term that we used that I was trained in it's called diversified. So that's a form of the manual manipulation of what you're speaking of. But there's also a lot of techniques. Something about performance health that we have and that we're proud of is bring a lot of technology into the office. So we have machines in office that can digitally detect where your spinal restrictions or tightness is, stiffness in the spine, and then we adjust with the instrument. So you don't hear that cavitation or that bone popping noise, which you like, but a lot of patients, get
Scares
kind of
them.
freaked. Yeah, they get freaked out, right? So the number one fear why a patient won't come to a chiropractor is because they're scared to get their neck adjusted, right? So the machine that we have, it's called a Pro Adjuster. Like I said, it's computerized, consistent, comfortable for the patient. You don't get that audible popping or cavitation, that quick twitch, high velocity movement, a little bit more gentle, a little bit more comfortable for the patient. So patients really tend to gravitate towards that. But again, we still do the diversified or the cracking of the adjustments for patients that we feel, are indicated, because patients that are, severely injured with disc herniations or they have sciatic pain, radiating symptoms, sometimes they're not a candidate for the old school, bone popping technique. So that's where the gentler techniques come into play. So
Do you do any manipulation?
yeah,
that
no,
kind
we
of-
do a ton of spinal manipulation. Again, like I said, when it's indicated, we will use that. But we try to use equipment as much as possible with, new age equipment. Just like every other medical profession, there's always, groundbreaking new techniques to new equipment, and we're proud to bring in the newer stuff into the office. So that's kind of what we're proud about Performance Health and Chiropractic, is having the new equipment, staying up with the time, staying up with the research, and bringing the best care to the patient. So.
A lot of people are they're afraid of that manipulation.
Yep.
And my guy used to celebrate
When it
yeah,
popped?
he'd go, oh, it was a celebration. And I
Yeah.
got people say, oh my God,
Yeah,
you know what could happen?
They get scared. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they do tend to get scared sometimes, and a lot of people again don't like her. The first time they'll get their neck adjusted, they'll have like an out of body experience. They're like, holy cow, that was unbelievable! I can't believe my bones could cavitate or crack that loud. So, but it's fun, makes it fun.
So yeah, you graduated summa cum laude. Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
very impressive. And then I noticed you were injured.
Yes.
And what kind of, it almost ended your career?
Yeah, so when I was 15 at South Fork, sophomore year, I was having severe low back pain. Couldn't figure it out for a while, what was going on. Had x-rays, eventually had a CT scan or a CAT scan. It showed I had fractured both parts of what they call the pars region of my vertebrae. It's a common injury in youth athletes, adolescent athletes, especially rotational athletes, like a sport like baseball. And so that injury took me almost a year to fully recover from. I was told I didn't know if I was going to play baseball again, be able to do that. But luckily, I had the right team in my side of the ring. Basically, I had chiropractic, I had physical therapy, and that's where I met Dr. Frank Giampietro, who owns Performance Health and Chiropractic, my partner. So it kind of came full circle when I met him when I was 15, and now I'm working with him, which is pretty cool. Full circle story there. So anyways, yeah, he got better from the injury through chiropractic care, through physical therapy, through strengthening. And then I was able to, of course, continue playing in high school and then collegiately. And then I played a year professionally as well in California. So I was really, really fortunate to have the opportunity to be able to do that after the injury. So.
I noticed that who was was it a minor league baseball team?
Yes.
Who was
Yeah.
the connect?
So it's an independent league. It's a professional baseball league, but it's not affiliated with any major league organization.
Okay,
So it's its own.
It wasn't a Dodgers.
No,
team,
no.
was it?
So a lot of these independent leagues, especially now because they cut down the major league draft to only 20 rounds. It used to be 42 rounds. So they call these independent leagues basically leagues where you're still getting paid to play, but you can get picked out of those leagues to play for a major league organization, and then get into their minor league system and work your way up. So there's some prominent players that have played independent ball that are now in the major leagues.
Was that a
or-
goal of yours? Did you want to play professional?
Yeah, I did. That was always a goal. Just couple injuries. I had a torn rotator cuff my senior year of college, and that kind of affected some of the
Throwing.
Yeah, exactly. And but I knew I always wanted to play. When I had signed to play independent ball, I already knew I was going to chiropractic school after, so it was kind of like my last ride to finish out my baseball playing days. So really, really fun opportunity. I enjoyed it, but I knew it was time to turn the next chapter into my
That's
career
tough
in
to
life.
do.
It is.
It's
It is.
really-
They say an athlete dies twice, right? When
Yeah.
their career's over, and then
I was talking to someone last night. We had a function last night, and he's his arm is in a sling and he's playing softball. And I said, there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than an aging jock.
Yep.
You know, been there. Done
Yep.
that,
It's
you know,
true.
until you finally learn, I can't do that anymore. you
Yeah.
know, so.
And that's the cool thing too about what I do now is I help people that want to stay active, prolong longevity in their life, health span years, staying healthy in their retirement years, want to play golf, want to play pickleball. So it's full circle for me to be able to have the opportunity to help these people continue living an active lifestyle, because that's the goal as what I do as a chiropractor, is to help people function and do the activities they want to do pain-free and enjoy their quality of life. So
So your injury experience and then your experience with the chiropractor was what drove you.
absolutely,
To-
absolutely, yeah, Doctor.
So you didn't grow up wanting to be a doctor or
No, that happened probably around that age when I met Dr. Frank, and he was my sports chiropractor, and I was like, wow, like what he does, what he stands for, really inspired me to want to pursue being a chiropractor. And he was really my only chiropractor, so that was the only experience I knew. As you were saying, there's different techniques. I had no idea about different techniques until I actually got into schooling. You know, you don't know what you don't know until you get into it. But yeah, I was like, oh, what Dr. Frank does is what I want to do. So that's kind of how it all came together.
do you ever have does a patient ever do they ask for their bones to be cracked? I mean, is that something that you expect?
Yeah, so again, chiropractic is such a diverse profession where there's so many different
I-
techniques, and you can have so many
Right.
different experiences as you experience. You're like, oh, this guy didn't, crack
Yeah,
me or adjust
yeah.
me.
I had them stretch me on a table,
yeah,
lay me
yeah.
on a heated table. You know,
So yeah, so everyone has a different technique, different experience. But yeah, some patients will, patients that have been chiropractic patients for a long time know the lingo and know they'll say, oh, I want to be manually adjusted, or
Yeah.
I want, what they want. So yeah, some patients will request that, obviously as the doctor, you make the decision whether they're a candidate for what they're asking for, because as we age, it gets some patients that were getting adjusted manually 20 years ago, you can't adjust them the same way anymore, right? So,
Yeah, you know, I know. Obviously, it's my back, so I know when it's not something's not
Yeah.
right, and it's always, but as you know, you lay down face down on the table,
yep.
put your feet together, and the doc says, "Oh yeah, you're off."
Yeah.
One leg short than
Yep,
the other or
yep.
whatever. How does that happen?
So a lot of that, with when you're checking alignment, muscular compensation, sacroiliac joint dysfunction. There's many different things that can contribute to that. The muscular system and the joints and the ligaments and the tendons, they all go hand in hand, right? So they all contribute to what you were just mentioning. So being able to address different components of the body, not just the spine, being able to address the muscular system, the fascial system, which we have all the techniques in office that we do. There's many different, I know you talk about techniques, different things that we do in office to help address that. Not just so much get on the table, let's crack it, you're out of the office. That's kind of what we pride ourselves in not doing. So we address the full body in its entire picture, not just one little component. So.
A few years ago, probably more than a few years ago, I heard about this procedure where I've got bone on bone,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess that happens with age. As you
Yep,
age, you
yep.
lose was it cartilage
The
between
the disc,
the disc, so your disc
exactly,
disintegrates,
it
so you
becomes
have bone on bone.
dehydrated. Yep.
So there's a procedure that they could inject something in there. Do you do that, or do you know about that?
I'm familiar. I've heard of that. Something we do in office. So we're a non-surgical office, right? So nothing we do is invasive, right? Something that you're mentioning though that we treat for that is non-surgical spinal decompression. What that does is basically it helps open up the disc space to rehydrate the discs, right? So the discs are about 84% water. As we age,
So it can
natural
regenerate?
It can regenerate. Now you'll
Really?
never be 100% to where you're 18 years old, but if we can get a little bit more space
Ham.
in between those vertebrae to help relieve pressure off of nerves, because when you start to get that disc dehydration, that's when you can get what people say the pinched nerve, the sciatica, right? Because there's not as much
sciatica
space
is-
for those nerves
thank God
to
I'm-
move. So what the decompression does is it helps relieve pressure off the nerves and rehydrates the discs, right, through a series of treatments. So
what's it do? So you stretch it?
yep. So you're
then-
laying flat on a table, and then the doctors, we can adjust the angle and the amount of poundage that we want pulling. It's all research scientific backed, and I can say L4 L5 is where you're having your disc issues, right? So I can program the machine to the angle to specifically target that L4 L5 disc, and then through a series of treatments, we can help rehydrate that disc to relieve pressure off of the spine.
So is that, while that process is going on, is that a lengthy process? Is it just minutes or?
Yeah,
is it-
so yeah,
or is
great
it-
question. So typically they're on the machine for about 25 minutes, the decompression machine. You're flat on your back. It's very relaxing. Some patients will even fall asleep on it because it's so comfortable. And then it does something called imbibition, right? So this happens, but you don't feel it. You'll feel the machine pulling you, but what it does is it helps basically, again, pump fluid into that disc by reverberating the disc like that.
And it's non-invasive, so it's your own fluid, your own body fluid.
Exactly.
So
Nothing
you're
is
not
being
putting fluid in.
being injected into the body. Nope.
So the body has the ability to do that.
Absolutely. The body has the ability to heal itself, which is the amazing thing about what our bodies can do. And then chiropractic is basically the driving force to help accelerate that healing. So with the different techniques and different equipment that we have. So
It's amazing. I'm tempted to try that.
yeah,
It's,
come on in.
I'm serious. I mean, if the, I'll give that some thought. I'll talk to you more about that.
Yeah.
You're a certified sports physician.
Yep.
So, specific team? Or
Yeah,
you-
so I did extra after I got my doctorate of chiropractic. I went into another certification program, certified chiropractic sports physician, or a CCSP. It's another 100 hours of study. You test out with the exam, and then you become certified as a sports physician. Myself and my partner, Dr. Frankie, is also a chiropractic sport physician. I'm also certified by the National Strength and Conditioning Association as a strength and conditioning specialist. So I could work with athletes, teams, programming, exercise regimens, things like that. So
Are you with any team now?
no, not currently with any team.
Okay. Is that something that you interested in doing? You think, or-
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
I do. My favorite is to help, like I said, helping people around our community, Martin County, St. Lucie County, getting people doing back to the activities they want to do. Like we treat a lot of golfers, pickleballers, people that want to stay active after retirement. So I love to help people with that because they have, they've worked hard their whole life, saved money. Now they want to live their life, but then if they have injuries, they can't do the things that they want to do that they were hoping to do post-retirement. So that's where I kind of come into play and help these people. So
I noticed on here acupuncture and dry needling.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. I have a friend. The situation she's in is it's unbelievable. She went out to spend some. She lives in Palm Beach Gardens. She went out to Oklahoma to visit a college roommate of hers, and hurt her. She's had problems with her back, but anyway, really severely got hurt in Oklahoma, and she's still there. And so she's going through all of this stuff, and she sent me a text last week and asked me if I knew anything about dry needling.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never even heard of it before.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, no, but let me see what I could find out. She wanted the main thing was it painful? So I don't know if you know Brian Moriarty.
yes.
He's my chiropractor. And he's on my board, and he's a good friend. I have his text or his cell phone number. So anyway, this was like in the evening. So I texted him. I said, Doc, can you tell me about dry needling? And anyway, he said that he doesn't do it and doesn't really, I don't know whether he said doesn't approve of it, but he doesn't use it.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it's very painful.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I texted her back, and she thanked me. Obviously, she decided not to do it.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is it? What is dry needling?
So dry needling is very similar to acupuncture in terms of the needles used, right?
Excuse
so
me
they're-
for saying,
yeah.
but that's what Brian said. I prefer acupuncture.
Okay.
So it's sort of the same
So,
procedure.
so think about it as two different things, similar but different, right? So acupuncture, Chinese medicine, they talk about different meridians in the body, right? You can treat different specific conditions, internal organs that Chinese medicine, says that you put needles in the body in these certain positions, they can treat certain internal organs, musculoskeletal. Dry needling is more of, I would say, the musculoskeletal approach where say you have a trigger point or you have, rotator cuff tendonitis, elbow tendonitis. You put the needles directly where the patient's symptoms are having, and say those tight muscular tissues, you put the needles in, you let them sit for 15, 20 minutes. I like to hook them up to a little bit of electrical stimulation. What that does is that will help trigger the muscle and it'll get the muscle to twitch. But the whole idea is to fatigue the muscle to eventually get the muscle to relax, okay? Very effective approach with tendonitis, ligamentous injuries, strains, sprains, rotator cuff, even musculoskeletal, lumbar strain, low back strains. There's many different conditions you can help with dry needling. Is it painful? Certain parts of the body where you don't have as much tissue, absolutely, it can be discomfort. Say a patient has plantar fasciitis on the bottom of their foot. You stick anything in the bottom of the foot, it's not going to be a pleasant experience, right?
Yeah.
But what I will say is if the patient, in those areas, if they can bear out the discomfort, they will get
It's effective.
fast, very effective, very
So
effective.
you have to bite the bullet, so to speak.
Again, and in not all areas are going to be as painful as others, right? So if you think about distal extremities, your hands, your feet, okay, that's going to be painful, not a lot of tissue. But if you go somewhere in a shoulder or a lower back, a gluteal region where there's more tissue, it's not as painful because
And I
you're
think
not.
that's where hers was. So it probably would have been, you know, she didn't specify, but I know she was having trouble with the lower back. So
Yeah, no, it could. I would recommend. I would recommend. I've treated a lot of patients with that have had success with treating low back.
Really?
But again, depending on what's going on with the low back, if it's a lumbar strain or a low back strain, they were lifting something up, then yes. But if it's a disc injury, then again, decompression. So that's kind of where all of our tools come into play, knowing which ones to use for which conditions. So.
well, we're winding down. I could sit here and talk to you forever. We're winding down. Is there something we missed that you want people to know about, or that we should talk about?
Yeah, something else that we do in our office, we treat a lot of balance, stability, cognition issues, right? So we have newer equipment, as I was saying earlier in the discussion. We have a whole pro balance system to help people that have stability issues, even post-concussive symptoms, cognition, mild cognitive impairment, something we didn't touch upon. How many times have you said, "Oh, I can't find my keys"? As we age, these things
my
happen,
God,
right?
every
So
day.
every day, even younger people, myself, I don't know where I put my keys half the time. But we all have what we call this mild cognitive impairment. And being able to train the brain with systems that we have in office now really helps slow that decline and staying sharp mentally. So again, we're just so much more than a chiropractic office, and I can't emphasize that enough with many different conditions that we treat. We don't just focus on spine, we can treat any joint in the body. So I just that would be the biggest takeaway, is knowing that if we can't help you, come to our office. We can't help you, we know where to send you, where to refer out. So that's
Tell
the
me how
biggest
the
thing.
cognitive things work. What is it? Is there a treatment?
Yeah, so we have a system in our office called Pro Balance, and then we also just added something called a Neuro Tracker. So the Neuro Tracker is actually affiliated with a lot of professional sport organizations, the Boston Red Sox, Washington Capitals. But what that does is we put on 3D glasses, and we have different training balls. So you'll see these balls moving at you in 3D, and there's about 10 balls, but you have to track anywhere from 3 to 5, and then they'll move around the screen, right? And you got to track them, staring straight into the screen, and then the balls will stop
You
moving.
track them
Exactly,
visually. So you have
exactly.
to hone in on
You
them.
have to hone in on it, and then the machine the digital screen will move these balls around and then stop, and you have to click on which ones were highlighted, right? So it's a lot of visual processing. Also, on the Pro Balance system, the old memory game, where you have to flip cards and remember which cards were matched.
Yeah.
So we do that while you're balancing in stability. So we're firing off all the central nervous system and all these different things. It's basically getting a workout for your brain, right? And what this does is improve memory, improve just how your cognition is. As we age, these things tend to decline. So being able to stay sharp with our skills, the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So that's kind of where that system comes into play. And we've helped a lot of people. The number one fear now among the elderly population is falling. It's surpassed cancer, because if you fall, what happens is you end up fracturing a hip. Then you're in the hospital. Then you're in the hospital, you can develop pneumonia, then you never come home, and it's just a
they're
whole
not a good
chain
place.
reaction. So that's also another thing, a preventative. We're a longevity clinic. We help people prevent injuries and disease. That's what we do. So
Really interesting. There's no doubt that I have visited chiropractors more than MDs. I believe in the chiropractic. I
Yep.
think they solve so many problems. So really interesting. Doc, I could talk forever,
you,
but
Joe.
thanks for taking the time out
Absolutely.
and visiting us.
Thank you for having
you.
me.